Dawn breaks over a Viking farmstead in 9th century Norway. Smoke rises from the longhouse as the household stirs. Today, we're stepping back 1,000 years to answer a question that might seem simple, but reveals everything about how these Norse people actually lived. What did Vikings eat for breakfast? The word breakfast didn't exist in Old Norse. Vikings spoke of dagvor, the day meal, typically eaten mid-morning after several hours of work. But our story begins earlier, in the dim interior of the longhouse, where the morning fire has never truly died. For most Vikings, the morning meal centered on one thing, grautr. We'd call it porridge. Made from barley, oats, or rye, this wasn't the refined oatmeal we know today. This was hearty, filling, and absolutely essential for survival. A Viking housewife would start by grinding grain on a quern stone. Backbreaking work that could take an hour just to prepare enough flour for the family. But porridge alone doesn't make a meal. Vikings added skyr, a cultured dairy product somewhere between yogurt and cheese, tangy and protein-rich. Or they'd pour on buttermilk, sometimes still warm from the morning milking. In wealthier households, you might find butter melting into the hot grain, or even honey drizzled on top, liquid gold in an age without sugar. Alongside porridge came bread. Though not the fluffy loaves we imagine. Vikings made flatbread, cooked directly on hot stones by the fire. Barley flatbread, dark and dense, sometimes mixed with peas or even bark during harder times. Rye bread for those who could afford it. These weren't sliced and buttered. They were torn, dipped in the porridge, used as edible plates. Winter breakfasts told a different story, a story of survival through preservation. Salted herring, dried cod, smoked mutton. These weren't delicacies. They were calories that could last months. A Viking might gnaw on a piece of dried fish while working, then come inside to soak it in whey or water to make it edible. Blood sausages hung from the rafters. Cheese, aged hard enough to require soaking. This was a cuisine built on making summer's abundance last through winter's scarcity. But not all Vikings ate the same breakfast. A jarl, a Norse chieftain, might wake to a very different table. Fresh eggs from the hen house. Bacon from the smokehouse. Soft white bread made from imported wheat. Perhaps even ale, brewed strong and served in a drinking horn. Status wasn't just shown in silver arm rings and fine weapons. It was there in every meal, in the quality of the grain, in the presence of meat when others ate only porridge. Children ate what adults ate, there was no separate children's menu. A Norse child would break their fast with the same barley porridge, the same flatbread. But they'd get the buttermilk first, the softer portions of fish. Mothers would sometimes sweeten a child's portion with berries preserved from summer, lingonberries, bilberries, wild strawberries turned into thick preserves. What did Vikings drink with breakfast? Not coffee, that was centuries away. Not tea in the way we know it. They drank water, yes, but more often buttermilk or whey. Weak ale was common even in the morning. Safer than questionable water, nourishing, and easy to make in large quantities. Some drank broth, the liquid from boiled meat, warm and salted. Hydration came in many forms, and almost all of them had calories. The Viking breakfast changed with the seasons in ways we can barely imagine. Spring brought the first eggs after the winter shortage, and wild greens that could be boiled into the porridge. Summer meant fresh milk instead of preserved skyr, new cheese, and the possibility of fresh fish instead of dried. Autumn was harvest, new grain making the freshest porridge of the year, hazelnuts gathered from the forest, and the slaughter season beginning. Each season brought not just different foods, but different hopes. But here's what we often forget, Vikings didn't gather leisurely around the breakfast table. The morning meal was fuel for work already begun. The men might have been at the fields for hours before eating. Women had milked the cows, gathered eggs, started the fire, and prepared the meal itself. Children had fetched water. Breakfast wasn't the start of the day. It was the reward for having already survived the hardest hours of morning labor. Modern archaeologists analyzing Viking skeletons can tell us something remarkable. Despite the simplicity of their diet, Vikings were generally well nourished. That porridge was whole grain. The dairy was probiotic rich. The fish provided omega-3s. The preserved meats, while salty, delivered protein and fat essential for survival in cold climates. This wasn't cuisine. It was evolutionary nutrition, honed over centuries. What looked like hardship was actually adapted perfectly to their world. So what did Vikings eat for breakfast? Barley porridge with buttermilk. Flatbread torn by the fire. Dried fish. Preserved cheese. Weak ale. Simple foods that tell a complex story, of survival, of status, of seasons, of families gathering in the half-light before another day of impossibly hard work. The next time you pour your morning oatmeal or spread butter on toast, remember, you're eating a breakfast that Vikings would recognize. The grains have been refined, the preservation methods changed, but the fundamental truth remains. Breakfast has always been about the same thing, fuel for the day ahead, and the brief warmth of food shared before facing the world.